Grr, arg.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of the Mixtape Podcast, where we are not reviewing a movie from a screenwriter's perspective this week. We have an unusual request, and that request is the Dahmer Mini-Series that aired on Netflix in 2022, entitled Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer Story Mini-Series. I'm your host. My name is Dean, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Marcelo Inostroza. This is the first time we've ever done a mini-series, so we're going to see how it goes. We're going to break down each episode, and we're going to discuss the intricacies and the psychology that is Jeffrey Dahmer and, of course, the show. Usually, at the end of the show, I have trivia, but considering this is going to be kind of a long one, I'm going to be sprouting my trivia throughout the episodes, and I'm going to let you know what was the truth and what wasn't the truth. So fact from fiction. And just so everybody knows, the Dahmer Netflix series is 90% truth. So that should absolutely terrify you. The writers and the showrunner did not take a lot of liberties. They took some, which I will be addressing. And if you feel like I've messed up on a fact, or if you feel like I've missed a fact, you can pop it in the comments if you're on YouTube. And please subscribe, like, and share. We would really appreciate it if you like what we have to say. So, I forgot to say who requested it. My friend Michael requested it. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. So, the writers of the series, I'm not going to go through writers and directors of every single episode. The writers of the series are Ian Brennan, Ryan Murphy, David McMillian, Riley Smith, and Janet Mock. And the showrunner of Dahmer is the amazing Ryan Murphy. Big fan of his. Okay, so the premise of Dahmer, if you don't know, the story of a cannibalistic serial killer named Jeffrey Dahmer, aka the Milwaukee Monster. Episode 1, entitled Bad Meat. Now, this series is not linear, and when I say not linear, I mean it jumps back and forth between years. So we'll go from 1991 to 1987 to 1978. It skips. I'm not going to bother with saying this is the year that we're in. I'm just going to break down the bullet points of the episode so we can discuss it. Okay, so we're in Milwaukee, and I'm going to say it's 1991. So it starts off, Jeffrey is getting arrested. So the end of the show starts, it's the first episode, but it starts out how he got arrested, and then the rest of the series is how he got caught and how he got arrested. So he gets arrested because he picks up a man at a nightclub, and they go back to his place. His apartment is in the show, it's a complete replica of Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment in real life. So if you watch the show, that is exactly what he had. He had the fish tank, the sink looked the same, the freezer looked the same, the carpet looked the same. The set designers on this show got everything so accurate to his actual apartment, it's fucking scary. So he picks up a guy at a nightclub, they go back to his place. He says to him, I just want to take pictures, I'll give you $50. The guy takes his shirt off, Jeffrey takes some pictures, and then he handcuffs him. And the guy's like, oh, fuck. And he's like, no, wait, I want to leave. And then he looks at the guy and he says, why do people always want to leave me? And that is a running psychological theme through the Dahmer series, and we'll get into more of his psychology as we kind of unravel him. The guy eventually gets away. He starts playing along. He goes into the bedroom with Jeffrey. He starts cuddling Jeffrey because he understands the only way he can get away is by playing the game. Jeffrey puts on The Exorcist 3 to get him in the mood. That is true. He was obsessed with the Emperor from Star Wars, and he was obsessed with the third Exorcist, and he would routinely show his victims Exorcist 3. So he's playing along, and then he gets away. He runs out the door. He runs down the street screaming. That was true. He bumps into some cops. That is true. Brings the cops back to the apartment because he has handcuffs on him and the cops don't have the key. That is true. So the cops have to bring him back to the apartment to get the key, to get the cuffs off. That is true. That happened. The cops go into his apartment. They're like, okay, where's the key? Jeffrey shows him where the key is in a drawer. The cops go into the bedroom and they find Polaroid photographs of basically dead bodies, decapitated torsos, just gruesome stuff. That is true. The cop turns around and says, cuff him. That is true. That happened. Jeff is instantly arrested. And then the cops open the fridge and find a severed head in the fridge. That is true. That happened. There's body parts in the freezer. There's a barrel of acid with body parts decomposing in his bedroom and 5 skulls and bones. That is all true. There is more that they left out that is more gruesome, but that is what they had in the show. At the end of the episode, the cops bring his father to the police station and tell him basically all of this, and that they believe he actually ate some of his victims, and it's actually really heartbreaking for the father. Now, in real life, that is kind of not what happened. I mean, the father was told, but he was told by someone else. He wasn't told by the cops, and then that is when the cops contacted him after, and then he went down to the station. But the father throughout this is a running theme because you just feel so bad. You're heartbroken for him because he really didn't know his son was doing this. I mean, imagine being a parent or even a sibling of someone and you're like, wait, they did what? It would be so hard to wrap your mind around it. But anyway, that's episode 1. What did you think? What do you think about the non-linear fashion that they've decided to use? And what did you think about the first episode?
I really like the nonlinear fashion of storytelling that they used in Dahmer. Some writers who do nonlinear in TV or movies forget to put title cards and they bounce in between time periods, in between scenes. But Dahmer does it in such a way that we'll be shown a moment in 1991 that correlates to the moment they're about to shift to. So that helps the audience reorient themselves to figure out, okay, this moment is tied to the moment we're about to jump to. The thing that I loved about this first episode is all about tone and all about introducing you to the askew universe of Jeffrey Dahmer, to put it nicely. I love that as he is tormenting this poor guy in his bedroom, the director constantly cuts back to his next door neighbor because his next door neighbor has a grate in her apartment where she can actually hear everything that's going on. So it was really terrifying for me to watch this next door neighbor listen to what Jeffrey Dahmer was doing in the next room. And I really love the way that Aaron Taylor Johnson played Jeffrey Dahmer because he played him with such disdain and off. The tone of his voice, his hair, his glasses, his mannerisms. It was so good, but it was so fucked up. I absolutely fucking loved it. And also, when Jeffrey Dahmer takes this guy into his room, when he closes the door jams. And I really, really like that throughout this scene, there are moments that serve as story points before the guy that Jeffrey Dahmer tried to abduct escapes the room. So I really, really enjoyed that. The most disturbing thing to me about this first episode is that I felt like a rat caught in a cage, that I couldn't go anywhere. I really thought the director did a fine job with this claustrophobic feeling and this feeling of anxiety every single second. I mean, when Jeffrey Dahmer had the poor guy in his bedroom and was showing him The Exorcist, I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And
Yeah.
and even worse, the mattress that they're sitting on has blood on it, and
Mm.
on the floor, there's a body on the floor, and
Yeah.
like Dean said, not to mention the big blue vat of acid in the fucking corner. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, the the direction did such a good job with
Mhm.
making you so uncomfortable that you thought you were going to snap. And I also really like this movie because I also really like this first episode, excuse me, because it's essentially in one location. If you take out the end part, it's just Jeffrey Dahmer torturing this poor guy in his apartment building. My favorite moment, though, is when his victim tries to escape for the second time, and Jeffrey sort of grabs him and he lays him down nicely on the bed, and
Mm.
he puts his head up to the guy's chest, and he says something like, I can hear your heart. That was so fucking. I mean, are you kidding me? That is. Oh my god! I felt so icky while watching this. It was just so fantastic.
So first of all, Jeffrey Dahmer is played by Evan Peters.
Oh, I'm
So,
sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
and Evan Peters just won an award for it. So, shame on you. So, okay. I think his name was Tracy Edwards, the guy that got away. At Jeffrey Dahmer's trial, he actually said that did happen. Jeffrey put his head on his chest, and he actually said, "I'm going to eat your heart." So that's even more terrifying. And we're going to get into the next door neighbor, Glenda Cleveland, in a minute, because they've fictionalized a lot of stuff with her, but we'll get into it once her storyline gets going. So episode 2, entitled "Please Don't Go." And we've gone all the way back to 1966, and we see Dahmer as a boy. It kind of shows where his interest in anatomy comes from. His dad showed him, the insides of animals, showed him how to taxidermy, found dead animals on the road. This is how you do it. Look, look, in the series, his dad Lionel does write a book. I do have that book. It's called A Father's Story. I haven't read it, so I don't know if that's accurate or not. I think there's a lot of things in this show that are trying to show us why Jeffrey is the way that he is, and I don't think it ever computes. I don't think we ever get an answer. The show tries, but I don't think so, because in an interview with Jeffrey, they actually ask, like, why you like this? And he goes, I don't know. There's nothing happened in my childhood to make me like this. My parents never did anything bad to me. I don't know why I'm like this. So the show is trying to show us this is why he is the way that he is, but I don't think a lot of it happened. As a boy, and we're talking about like 6 or 7 years old, he comes home, he finds his mum on the bed. He thinks she's dead. He calls an ambulance. She's not dead. She's basically a drug addict. This is another tangent that the show goes on, that his mother took drugs when she was pregnant with him, prescription, non-prescription, and that is why he is the way that he is. That's I don't believe that at all, but they're just trying to be like, oh, why? They're trying to find a reason where they're kind of, sometimes there's not always a reason. He always sees his parents fighting, which is true. He did say in an interview, I always saw my parents fighting, but that wasn't, a lot of kids find their parents fighting, don't, go and eat people. So they're trying to find reasons where there's no reasons. So now we push forward in the future to 1981, and Jeffrey is in a department store, and he sees a male mannequin. He decides to steal it. So he waits till the store closes, and he grabs the mannequin, disassembles it, puts it in a bag, and leaves. That happened. That was true. And then we skip forward again to 1991, where he's luring a 14-year-old boy to his place, where he drugs him. And the boy ends up escaping and bumps into some people who call the police. This whole scenario actually did happen. The police show up. So does Dahmer. Dahmer is saying, this is my boyfriend. He's drunk. I'm just going to take him back to the apartment. And the people, one of them is Glenda Cleveland, so that was accurate from the show. The people who found him, Glenda and some other people, are telling the cops, look at him, he's not an adult. And Jeffrey's like, no, he's my boyfriend, he's an adult. And Glenda is just like, are you kidding me? The cops look at the boy, they're like, oh, well, it's a gay thing. It's a gay thing, we kind of don't want to get involved in that. The cops don't listen to Glenda, and they actually help Dahmer escort the boy back to his apartment. That is true. That happened. The police leave, and the police just leave the boy with Dahmer. They didn't do a background check on Dahmer. They didn't. I mean, a 14-year-old boy, you can see that he's 14. They didn't do anything. The reason they didn't do anything, the reason that they give is because the police chief at that time in Milwaukee told the police to be more accepting of the gay community. So the police officers didn't want to do anything because they didn't want to have shit thrown against them from the gay community. Oh, you're being like homophobic or anything, which is pretty fucking lackluster. You're a policeman, like, do your fucking job. So they didn't do their jobs. In the show, there's an actual police call from Glenda Cleveland, who flagged down the cops. And she's basically asking about the boy, and the cop's like, no, he's fine. We took him back to his apartment with his boyfriend. And Glenda's like, but he's a child. And the guy's like, nope, he's an adult. Again, no background check. They did not do their jobs. And, the cop keeps saying, I don't know what to tell you. We did our job. the boy is safely with his boyfriend, and Glenda's like, no, 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 it's a child. It's a child. You're not listening to me. And they're like, no, it's fine. Everything's fine. And that's it. That's kind of how the episode ends. So, and that all really happened. And I will tell you what happened to the police officers, because what they said in the show did not happen. What did you think about that scenario? He steals the mannequin. The reason he steals the mannequin was, this is before he starts killing people. He's fascinated by the male physique, and this is a way that he can kind of get his kicks without kind of interacting with anyone, and that the mannequin will come back a little bit later. But yeah, what do you think? That was a big episode. That had like 3 jumps in timelines. So what are your thoughts?
In reference to him saying the mannequin, I can chalk it up to escalation. He is
Mm,
the mannequin is a form of escalation, and the reason why I think he wants a mannequin is because he is sexually confused and sexually confused. And
mm,
I think throughout this whole series, it was really fascinating to me how the one thing that Jeff wasn't willing to talk about was his sexuality, and how that played into him choosing the victims that he chose. I really, really like it how the writers framed his sickness by saying he doesn't enjoy essentially killing people. He gets off on it. Like most of us would get excited about going on a date with a girl or getting a promotion at work, right? But Jeffrey Dahmer's trauma, so to speak, or his damage comes from being aroused by acts of violence. And that all stems in the flashbacks of this episode when his father teaches him taxidermy. Now, I really found it interesting where you said the writers tried to explain Dahmer's evilness, and they tried to explain
mm.
where his evil compositions came from.
Yeah.
I I don't know if that was truly necessary, but it was a really, really interesting way for the writers to frame the argument in this episode, because I hated Dahmer's father in this episode. I really, really believed that man did not take 1 ounce of responsibility for what his son became in the way that he was, and the way that he was brought up, because his father was too busy dealing with his mother, who was on like 26 fucking pills in all the flashbacks. I'm like, sir, you need to fucking help your wife, and you need to fucking stay here for your son. But what he did specifically in these flashbacks is he would be too busy fucking fighting with his wife, and then leave Jeff Dahmer alone for fucking days with that wackadoo of a mom that he had.
Yeah.
In reference to the present day story with the neighbor and the 14-year-old boy, the fucking cops in this show make me want to.
I know.
But you fucking idiot! How I couldn't believe how many times the American justice system let this guy go. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
All you have to do is speak to him for 5 minutes. I'm like, what the hell
Yeah.
are you talking about? Also, one thing that I forgot to mention,
Mm,
I really like the way that Jeff lures his victims, because Jeffrey Dahmer is not a physical specimen at the beginning.
mm.
So I really love that he uses a chemical concoction to subdue his victims, and to basically paralyze them, that leaves him with the ability, once they are knocked the fuck out, to do awful, awful, awful things to them. I thought that that was a really interesting, inventive way to deal with your victims. But with that being said, he wasn't too smart. I gather, like he just did things, and I'm like, shouldn't you really be thinking about this? But that plays a lot into his compulsion, into how he tried to figure it out, and his views on the world, what his father thinks of him, what his grandma thinks of him. That will come in shortly.
Mm.
But it was this second episode was really frustrating, in that the police showed up and they did nothing. And this poor woman, this poor neighbor character tried her best to save this 14-year-old boy, but the police did nothing because they were worried about pissing off the gay community. It was just really unfortunate.
Yeah, Glenda Cleveland actually called the cops for months trying to follow up, and they just dismissed her every single time, which is, fucking sad. I mean, the story is accurate from the show, but in the story, he had underwear on. In real life, he didn't. He was stark naked, and apparently he had blood coming out of his anus, and they still did nothing. He would have looked naked. He would have looked like a 14-year-old boy. Cops didn't check Dahmer, no ID or anything. Yeah, it's unfortunate that some, not all, but some police just don't give a fuck. And you can see when they got back in their vehicle, they were laughing about it. And that's true because there is recordings. Everything's recorded on dispatch. There are recordings of them laughing about it. So that's actually even more terrifying that the people that are supposed to protect you don't. But anyway, that was episode 2. Episode 3, entitled Doin' Dahmer. We're in Milwaukee, 1959. Now, this episode tries to show us why he is the way that he is. They really push on that fact. The parents left him alone. His mum left him. His mum took his little brother and went, "No, I'm leaving." Didn't give Jeff a reason why, just left him alone at 17. Now, his father was away with his then girlfriend. The father didn't know that the mum left him alone at 17. He had no fucking clue. Why he didn't try to call Jeff or anything like that, I don't know. He didn't know. So this is when Jeff is trying to figure out his sexuality and who he is. Jeff has said in interviews that he hated being gay. He hated himself. He didn't want to be that way because it was a sin. I think that really escalated a lot of his anger towards himself. That in my mind, he was killing people, but it was like he was trying to kill himself. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like a projection of, I hate myself, so I'm projecting this onto them. Unknowingly, but psychologically, that could have been what's going on. People do that. So we see how he's learning how to taxidermy and dissect animals. He's driving home, and a few days he's driving home the same route, and he sees a runner, a shirtless male runner that's got a quite nice physique. And one day he hides in the bushes where the runner always runs the same route at the same time, hides in the bushes with a bat, and then jumps out at him, basically doesn't hit him, just like stands there. And then the next scene is, the guy is at his house and they're having a beer and they're laughing, but then we realize that's just in Jeffrey's mind. Okay. That, except for the pretend bit where it's in his mind. There was a hitchhiker. He didn't have a shirt on. He had a shirt on when he was running and shorts that Jeffrey liked the physique of. He did hide in the bushes one day with a bat. He was going to clock him over the head. And as the universe would have it, the runner who runs that same route at that same time every day actually didn't run that day. So something intervened for that runner and he didn't run. So Jeffrey never got to clock him over the head. Whoever that runner is, fucking the universe was on your side that day, my friend. So anyway, the next day Jeffrey's driving home and he picks up a hitchhiker. And the hitchhiker's like, "Hey, I'm going to a concert this way, can you take me?" And Jeffrey's like, "Oh, do you want to come back to my house for some brewskis? We can talk and then, I'll take you to the concert." And he goes, yeah, okay. Because back then, like, nobody knew that hitchhiking was an issue. So he takes him to his place and eventually the guy wants to leave. He's becoming uncomfortable. He's like, "Look, I want to go now to the concert. That happened. That was true. All of that is true." And Jeffrey says, again, "Why does everyone want to leave me?" Again, this is a running psychological theme for him. And then he tries to kiss him and the guy backs off. He's like, "Whoa, what the fuck, dude?" And Jeffrey's like, "Just calm down. Like, I didn't mean anything by it." Like it was a joke and trying to push it off. And the guy goes, "Nah, fuck this, I'm leaving." And then Jeffrey hits him over the head with a dumbbell. And then it didn't show it, but it showed him strangling him. But in real life, he actually strangled him with the barbell. He put it around his neck and just pulled and strangled him. But I don't know why they didn't do that in the show. There's a lot of shit in the show they left in. Why didn't they leave that in? And then kills him and doesn't really know what to do with the body, kind of hides him under the house. Now, the show shows him putting the body parts in acid and then grinding up the bones and throwing his ashes everywhere. That did not happen. What actually happened was he did cut the body up. He put it in bags. And this is a scene that was actually in the show. He went to the local dump when he was pulled over by police because he was swerving. And the police looked in his back seat and they're like, "Why have you got garbage?" He's like, "I'm just, I can't sleep. I'm taking the garbage to the garbage dump." The body was in there. That happened. That was real. The cops let him off. Fucking cops. That was real. He turned around, went home. And what he actually did was, because he'd already chopped up the body, he actually just hid the body in a drain pipe. He didn't grind it into that. I don't know why they did that in the show. Maybe it was to be more like, "Oh, look at what I'm doing." But he didn't do that. 3 years later, after he got back from the army, he took the body out of the pipe and spread the body parts all around the property. That is what actually happened. That's more terrifying, I think, than what they did in the show, but whatever. So, what did you think about them trying to push this is why he is the way that he is, and his parents and his sexuality? There was a lot in this episode. This was the first time he had killed someone, and Jeff actually said in an interview, he didn't actually mean to kill the hitchhiker. He didn't want to, he didn't mean to, and then he freaked out when he did. And there was 9 years in between that kill and the next kill, which we'll get to, I think, in the next episode. So there was a long stretch. But what do you think?
Someone with an addiction can run circles around their heads, can justify what they do with any sane argument to themselves. They can say, "Okay, I'm going to do this one more time and I'm going to be a good boy." Ironically, that's the title of one of the episodes. "And I'm not going to do it for a long time." But in reference to the writers, again, trying to give us a reason for Jeffrey's acts and for the way that he is, all human beings have this section in their brain that releases this chemical that gives all human beings empathy. And in some people, that area of the human brain doesn't work right. So those people cannot feel empathy. So essentially, if you really think about it, those people are broken. And I think, don't quote me because I'm not a doctor, I think that that section of Jeffrey Dahmer's brain, like a lot of killers who commit serial murders, is broken. So, in a sense, what we think is bad, Jeffrey Dahmer doesn't think is bad because he doesn't have that part of the brain, or he doesn't have enough of that chemical that produces something that we call empathy. And also, I really like the way that Jeffrey sort of approaches his victims in this episode, like the hiker when he lures him to his cabin to start working out with him and to offer him drinks. The way that he talks to him is so innocent and so matter of fact. And that says to us that Jeffrey doesn't have the proper social skills. So essentially, he has a brain of a 2-year-old in the body of like a 27-year-old. So it constantly floored my mind how these men kept getting dragged in to being murdered by this guy that had little to no social skills. Now, granted, all the men that he was picking up were half in the bag already, but still, if you're half in the bag already, shouldn't you have some awareness about there's something off about this guy? Maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I shouldn't accept a drink from him. The moment when Jeffrey Dahmer whacked his first victim with the dumbbell was phenomenal. I'm with you. I don't understand why they didn't show Jeff picking up the body, going under the body, taking the dumbbell, and and choking him out with the dumbbell, because that's more violent and that's cool. And like Dean said, we see a lot. We see so much worse in this episode. Like, did Ryan Murphy and the censors, or there are no censors, but did Ryan Murphy and his writers draw the line at that? And you're saying in real life he put the body in a drain pipe? That is so much cool. That that that's so much better than what Ryan Murphy and his writers decided to show us. I mean, God forgive the universe forgive me, but when Jeff went to like that bridge and he did like he did like the LeBron James with the ashes of his first victim, I was like, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. So
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, just stick the guy in the drain pipe. But
Yeah.
also, the thing that disturbed me is when we find out later that he took the rest of his body parts and he spread them in the field. And when he's asked about it in a police interview in the show, the police asked him, why didn't you put them all in one section? Right. And what he said truly broke me because I could understand it. He says, I wanted him to be with me still, and I
Yeah.
wanted him to still be around. And I'm like,
Yeah.
holy fuck. This serial killer is a serial killer that was born out of neglect.
Yes. But I would say a lot of people are neglected that don't do this.
Right,
So,
right, right, right,
you
right,
know,
right. But my retort to that is a lot of people that are neglected don't do this, but those people have the thing that I mentioned, empathy. And Jeff doesn't have that.
right. I do think it goes beyond that because I know people that don't have empathy. They don't have it, but they're not serial killers and they can function. A lot of people don't have empathy. I think more people than people know, and they function. So yes, he didn't have it, but there was so much more than that because a lot of people don't have it. That again, he said, I don't know why I am the way that I am, but I am, and there's nobody else to blame but me. The fact that his mother abandoned him, he felt like his dad abandoned him. Nobody understood him. He was gay in a family full of Christians that would extradite him if they found out. He had major, major traumatic abandonment issues, which isn't why he was the way that he was, but for someone that had a screw loose, which he did, his brain just did not work. It didn't function because the way that he looked at people, and this is a lot of serial killers say this a lot, is they don't see people, they see objects. So the way that you and I would see a wooden chair, that's how they see a human. So we'll take a chair, we'll break the legs off, we'll snap it in two, we'll saw it in half. That is how they see people. They don't see people as people. They don't see people as souls. That is something more than empathy. That is something that is missing. Episode 4 is called The Good Boy Box. So Jeff's father is getting really pissy at him. Jeff's a drunk. He doesn't know what to do with him. So he enrolls him in college and Jeff flunks out because he's drinking and he doesn't go to class. And then his father's like, you fucking get it. You're going to the army. You are going to the army. And that is that. And Jeff goes to the army and Jeffrey actually says in interviews he actually really enjoyed the army. The only reason he got kicked out was because he's an alcoholic, which draws into any addiction is trying to cover up issues that people don't want to deal with. So that's why he was kicked out. But the one thing in the army, because he was training to be a field medic, the one thing in the army that he learned was medications and how to sedate someone. So he learned all that in the army, which is kind of horrifying. What certain medications do to the body. After he gets kicked out of the army, his dad's pissed and he's like, you're going to live with your grandmother. That's it. And this is where he brings the mannequin home and his grandmother goes into his room and finds the mannequin. Now that happened, but what didn't happen was the confrontation, the escalation of confrontation of why do you have the mannequin? And Jeff says in the show, what did you do with it? She goes, oh, I threw it out with the trash. They've already taken it. And then Jeff gets angry. Now in the show, Jeff, you don't see Jeff getting angry. He doesn't get angry. But in this scene, he loses it. I didn't like it, not because that didn't happen. Did his grandmother find the mannequin? Yes. Did they have a discussion about it? Yes. What did Jeff tell her? Oh, it's something that I found that I brought home. I thought that, it would be fun. I'll get rid of it. He was the one that actually got rid of it because he didn't want his grandmother to suspect anything. The only outburst we really see from Jeff is then, and it's completely out of character. Because he doesn't do that ever again in the show. So I think they wanted to show he does have anger issues, but really, Jeffrey Dahmer doesn't have anger issues. I know some people will disagree because they're like, but he killed people. He didn't kill people out of anger. He didn't even want to kill people. If you watch his trial, if you watch interviews with him, he actually said, I didn't want to kill these people. I didn't like killing these people. He didn't enjoy the act of killing. He just didn't know how to get them to stay. He didn't want them to leave, which is massive, massive trauma. He goes, people always leave. I didn't know how to make them stay. I didn't want to kill them, but I didn't know how to make them stay. And I don't know if you'd ever hear any serial killer ever say that. So anyway, that's the mannequin thing. And Jeff is really struggling with his sexuality because he can't tell anyone. He tries to tell his dad, and his dad starts talking about something else. Oh, yeah, we can do this. Nobody wants to hear. Nobody says to him, it's okay to be who you are. It really is okay. Nobody says it. He's already got a screw loose. That doesn't help. He hates the way he is, and he just needed somebody. Not that this would have stopped him, just to say, hey, it's okay to be who you are. Like, it really is okay. You're not going to go to hell, blah, blah, blah. He starts working at a blood plasma center. Now, in the show, it shows him stealing the blood and drinking it at home. That didn't happen. Fabrication of the show has to be dramatic. That's ridiculous. That never happened. This is still the same episode, so the episodes are an hour long. He starts frequenting gay bars and bathhouses. And bathhouses, if you don't know, they're not a thing now, but in the 70s and 80s, a bathhouse was a gay bathhouse where two gay men would go, pay for a room, and have sex. It's like a hotel, but they call them bathhouses. And he drugs men to sleep with them. He drugs them, he then sleeps with them. He has this thing where he wants to assert complete control over his victims. He doesn't like them to be awake. He doesn't want them to talk. In nowadays, you can just literally hire someone to do that. You don't have to kill anybody. You can hire someone. I'll pay you $200. Lie there. Don't do anything. I want to assert control. But then you couldn't do it. So he starts sleeping with them. He doesn't want them to leave. He picks up a man in a club, brings him back to the bathhouse. Oh no, brings him back to a hotel instead of the bathhouses, because by then he's been kicked out because he's been found out that he's drugging people, and they kick him out. And he's like, well, where the fuck am I going to go? I can't go to my grandma's house. I can't go to the bathhouses. So he takes him to the Ambassador Hotel in Milwaukee, and this man's name is Stephen Toomey. And what happens is accurate. He makes him and Stephen a drink, but he accidentally drinks the one he's put the sleeping pill in, and he puts the pill in his one as well, but he's like, oh fuck. What happens is accurate. He passes out, and Jeffrey has said this in interviews. He woke up and he turned around and the guy was dead. He goes, I have no idea what happened. Now, usually you would be like, yeah, right, okay, so you're playing that card. But he admitted to every other person he killed. He did not remember what happened. He goes, I woke up and the guy was dead. This was the second victim after the first one, Stephen Hicks, which was the hitchhiker. So this has been 9 years. And he said, I brought him back to the hotel not to kill him, just to drug him, assert control, and then he would wake up in the morning, just like the guys at the bathhouses, and that's it. I did not mean to kill him. Now, this incident, he said in an interview, is what escalated his killing. So if Stephen Toomey had never died, he probably wouldn't have gone on his killing spree. He would have been perfectly happy just drugging them and then, leaving them in the hotel in wherever they were. But yeah, so what he does is he puts his body in a suitcase, which happened, and he took it back to his grandmother's house, which happened, and he put it in the fruit chiller downstairs in the basement, which happened. And he left it there for about a week before dismembering it, which happened. So, the Good Boy Box episode 4 thoughts.
The Good Boy Box was one of my favorite episodes of the series because I love the way that Jeff tries to stay as normal as possible with his grandmother, but that scene of his grandmother finding the mannequin really puts him in a position where I thought it was going to snap. Like for this whole episode, I was like, okay, his point of no return is going to happen in this episode, and it has to be the grandmother. So when he didn't make his grandmother one of his victims, I was like, okay, so you kind of have some morals. You kill folks, but you won't go as far as killing your family. So I could roll with that. I could sort of justify that a little bit. The other thing that I was thinking about this entire episode, I was like, Jeff, if being with your grandmother is such an issue, why don't you I kept thinking, like, why doesn't he go to like a hotel? Now I know in this episode he goes into a hotel, but skipping forward here, what happens in the next couple episodes really pissed me off. That sequence with Jeff and the guy in the hotel room is actually my favorite moment of this whole ingenious miniseries because, like Dean said, Jeff goes to drug his victim's drink, but he accidentally drugs himself. And I love the way that Evan Peters starts to notice that he drugs himself, and he smacks himself in the face. And I also love that the director of the episode, if you watch the scene, Jeffrey Dahmer is in focus, and everything behind him is blurred. But when he comes out of the bathroom, everything comes back into focus. And I love that the director focused on Evan Peters as Jeffrey Dahmer coming out of the bathroom with the drink extended, and he gives him the drink. They start dancing around. They start doing what they're doing, and then we cut to the next morning. Jeffrey is passed out. The camera follows Jeffrey as we see the indented torso of his victims. If Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't a real person, and if this didn't happen, I would say that is the coolest practical effects I've seen in because his entire torso
Yeah.
was bent, and his face was like, I'm like, holy fuck, Jeff, I was like, what did you do? But if I may, when you drink too much and you often black out, I stand by Jeffrey Dahmer's statement to the police, in that when you drink, when you drink too much, you black out. There are things that you don't remember.
Mm.
So I completely buy that.
Yeah,
The
but
other
he
thing
also
that
drugged himself. So it wasn't just the
right,
alcohol.
right,
She was drugged as well.
right, that is true. The other thing that I kept thinking about this magnificent scene in the hotel room, I
Mm.
kept thinking, how in the fuck are you going to get this guy out of here? Because you can't, drag him out. If you drag him out, you're fucked. You can't hide him anywhere. Checkout's going to come to see you. The maid, how the fuck are you going to get this guy out of here? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit. The obvious thing is that Jeff goes to get a suitcase, and he puts the guy in the suitcase. Can I ask you something? Did it bother you how many times people in the series complained about Jeffrey Dahmer's when he was when he was at his house? His neighbor, who we previously mentioned, complained about the smell. But when he lives with his grandmother complains about the smell for fucking weeks on end. So are
Yeah.
you telling me this poor woman couldn't I'm like, how many times do you have to complain about a smell before you go and do something? I don't care if the smell is coming from a place where you're afraid to go down. Fuck it. I'm disabled, guys. And if there's a fucking smell in my house, it doesn't matter if I got one fucking leg. I'm going to go find that fucking thing, and I'm going to go
Yeah.
solve it. It really drove me up a wall how inept the people around Jeff were, as to the fact that he was keeping live body parts in the places that he was staying. It was so fucking stupid. That was the one thing where I feel the writers kind of took a little bit of writer's license, and it's okay to use writer's license, but that really fucking annoyed the crap out of me, that these people were so fucking stupid. No, I'm not gonna. No. I'm not gonna say. I'm not gonna say stupid. I'm gonna say inept. It
Why
really bugged me.
why would you think that it would be a dead body though? Why would that
You
enter your
would,
mind?
well,
Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you something. You know this. I wouldn't think that it was anything nefarious. Jeff was such a nice person. Why would anybody think? Your brain doesn't go there. So the people that lived in his building, which he will move into, they did complain of smells coming from his apartment, and they did hear screaming. They did call the cops multiple times. The cops did fuck all. His grandmother did smell it, but why would you think your grandson is doing anything like that? Because he said, oh no, I'm just doing taxidermy. I've just got animals down there. I'm sorry. I'll clean up the smell. Why would you not believe that? That sounds plausible.
okay. So I will fall on my sword and say that I'm a disturbed little individual for going to the worst situation possible.
Yes. And what I was going to say before is I have actually smelt a decomposing dead body in the summertime. Didn't know that's what it was. You know what it smells like? It smells like garbage. And that is really shit to say. That's what it smells like. It smells like somebody has put bad meat, food, something in the garbage bin and left the lid open, and it's just wafting into your apartment. That is what it smells like. If you smell it, you don't automatically go, oh, well, that's a dead body. Clearly. No, it's not, because I thought it was just rotting garbage until I found out that's what it was. And I'm like, oh my God. So having experienced that, I understand why people didn't think it was any more than it was, because when he kept saying, oh, it's just bad meat, that's kind of what it smells like. Off meat, but like a lot of it mixed with other smells. So from that angle, I kind of do understand. So now we're at episode 5, entitled Blood on Their Hands, and we're in kind of present day, and Jeffrey is being interviewed by the police, and he's telling them he killed 3 men while living with his poor grandmother. Poor grandmother. One man he drugged, and this really happened. He brought home, he drugged him. He was offering him a jump for his car, brought him back to the house, gave him a drink. His grandmother comes downstairs and waits with him. And he's like, grandmother, he's just passed out drunk, go upstairs, go back to bed.
This is the moment when he's going to be backed into a corner and he has nowhere to go.
His grandmother's there and she's like, no, I'm going to wait with him until he wakes up. And Jeffy's like, oh, for fuck's sake. Like, he's just like, he's having an argument with his grandma. His grandma's, no, I'm not going to leave him. And then in the morning, the guy starts to kind of wake up, and the grandmother and Jeffrey are sitting at the bus stop, puts him on a bus. And Jeffrey's kind of a little bit pissed that he didn't get to do what he kind of wanted to do. The guy wakes up in hospital and he tells the cops, this guy drugged me. I know where he lives. The cops go to Jeffrey's house. They interview him, but they find nothing. There's no evidence. There's nothing. So they really can't do anything. Now, the real story, that did happen. The grandmother coming downstairs, that whole argument, that didn't happen. What happened was he took the guy back to his house. He drugged him, and the guy, the victim, the next thing he remembers after being at Jeffrey's house was waking up in the hospital. And he knew something had happened because his underwear was on backwards. So obviously Jeffrey had drugged him, had his way with him, and either dropped him at a hospital or put him on a bus. I think Jeffrey said in the interview he did put him on a bus, and somebody just must have took him to the hospital. But the whole grandma interaction, that did not happen. That was made up. But, for dramatic effect, I told you, only 10% of this show is made up. Everything else is fact.
Yeah, it's it's really, really astounding that this miniseries is this accurate, because like Dean just said, possibly only 10% of this story, this horrifying story, is made up. So that makes me this miniseries spoiled me when it comes to what writers can do and what a writer's room can do with a story based on actual events. Because a lot of stories based on actual events, one of their primary excuses for not staying close to the source material is they go, oh, it's too hard, it won't make sense, it won't connect with the audience. Bullshit. If I ever hear somebody bring that argument up to my face again, I will point them towards this show, because this show shows you that you can do it right if you have the patience and if you are an intelligible screenplay writer, and if you get qualified writers to help you achieve the vision that you want.
Yeah, exactly. So still in this episode, he gets arrested for sexually harassing an underage boy. And he spends 1 year in, it's not even a jail, it's just he's allowed to do whatever he wants kind of during the day, and then he has to go back to this, it's like a facility at night, because the judge takes pity on him. Now, the show didn't show this, but the judge actually got a lot of fucking shit for letting him off for sexually abusing a 14-year-old boy. He just pretty much just fucking let him off, and he got a lot of shit, which should have been in the show, but it wasn't. I understand it's not really about the judge. But anyway, so this is when his father starts to get suspicious of him. By this point, he's killed the hiker, the hotel guy, and 3 more. So he's killed 5 people. And we're still in the interview with him after he's been arrested. The detectives ask him why he did it. And he said And this is actually what he said. Because I didn't get caught, it was too easy, so I kept going. I mean, it was. He killed 17 people before he was caught. And the only reason he was caught was because he didn't lock his door properly. Because in real life, all the locks on his door in the show, he had 8 locks, and that was true. And he only locked one of them. If he had locked all the locks, he wouldn't have got caught and he would have kept going. So anyway, what did you think about that episode, the last bit? Because we've talked about the first bit on blood on their hands.
I really like it. Now I have a problem with the judge that lets him go off with a slap on the wrist for buggering a 14-year-old boy, and the reason why I have a problem with that is because I feel that Ryan Murphy and the writers could have taken a moment to show that judge's regret when it comes to what Dahmer does later. The fact that after all this, after all the after Jeff is escalating and he's going downhill at this point, right now his fucking deadbeat dad is like, oh, there might be a problem here. But still, when he says there might be a problem here, he doesn't blame himself. He blames his fucking wife. I'm like, dude, take some fucking responsibility, god damn it.
If you're a parent and your child turns out to be a serial killer, the last thing you're going to do is think, most people, you fucked up. Because parents do this thing where they think their kid is the be all end all, is the Christ, is the fucking second coming of Jesus. They do. It's a really weird thing. Not being a parent, I don't get it, but they do. So I understand why he's blaming everybody else but him. But in the final episode, he blames himself. He realizes he was projecting his shit on everyone, and then he goes, I think it's my fault. Where it wasn't. It wasn't, again, Jeff has said this in interviews, it wasn't anybody's fault. He wasn't abused. He wasn't, nothing bad happened to him. So it's just, again, the show trying to, find something that's not there, which I appreciate. But sometimes people do things and there's no explanation. Jeff was the way that he was, and there is no real reasoning. It's just, that's it. We kind of just got to accept that we will never understand why he was the way that he was. So now we're at episode 6, entitled Silenced. This is a great episode. This episode takes a lot of liberties, and it focuses on a victim rather than Jeffrey, which is a nice kind of pace change, because most of the show focuses on him, what he does, trying to understand psychologically why he does the things that he does. But this one, they've chosen to focus on a victim, which it's actually really nice, because I don't think victims get enough attention. It's always, the serial killer. So most of I would say 80% of the episode is centered around one of his victims who is deaf. That's why it's called Silenced. And it's filmed beautifully. And the way that it's filmed, the reason I like it is because it goes in and out of silence to show what the deaf man, his name is Tony Hughes, I believe, actually hears. And it's beautiful, because it'll just go completely silent and it'll just be sign language, and there'll be subtitles of him talking to his friends. And when he's at the nightclub, he can actually feel the beat of the music, but he can't hear it, but he can feel the beat. And it's really, I've never seen that done in a show before, where it shows you the perspective of the deaf person. Now you think, oh, well, that's not interesting because they obviously can't hear anything, but they can, because I have an aunt that's deaf and they can hear certain frequencies and certain vibrations, and they can hear boof, 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 like they can hear that kind of stuff if it's really deep tones. So it was really beautiful the way that they did it from his perspective, because he was deaf. So he's the only victim, Jerry, I don't know who that is, Jeffrey. He's the only victim Jeffrey knew for a year before killing him. Now, the things that they did together in this episode, they went on little dates. It was like a relationship. It wasn't like that. He just kind of knew him from the clubs and stuff. They weren't in a relationship. They didn't really do much. So they embellished a lot. They embellished a lot even with the victim, because all the things that he did, I'm not sure he did all those things. They basically wanted you to feel sorry for him, which you would have anyway. It didn't have to ramp it up, but it was a good vulnerability episode for the victim. So he knew him for a year before killing him. When he did eventually kill him, because again, it's this whole motif of why do you have to leave? There's one morning where Tony goes to leave. I don't want you to leave. Why do you have to leave? And then Jeffrey just kills him. And it's sad because you've gotten to know this character through the entire episode. You've connected. The writing is so good because the writer has enabled, I think the episode is like 45, 50 minutes. Within a 40 minutes, even a 30-minute time period, we have connected with this character. We don't want this character to die. He's really innocent. He's really sweet. We see his family. We see his friends. We see him out having fun. Even though he's deaf, he doesn't let it hold him back. It's amazing. He's an amazing person. So when Jeffrey kills him, it makes you dislike Jeffrey because for the first 5 episodes, it's really about trying to understand who Jeffrey is. And, I'm not trying to make excuses for what he's done. I want to understand psychologically why he does the things that he does, because what he did was horrible. But this one makes you hate him. It makes you sit there and go, I don't want to understand him. He's a fuckwit and he fucking kills people and fuck him. So this is a fuck you, Jeffrey episode. So after he killed Tony, his family obviously goes looking for him, and Jeffrey calls his family and says, stop looking for him. He's not going to come home. That's true. With Jeffrey's victims, he did call the families because they had ID on them, which he did keep, and that's why they were able to identify the bodies, because he kept all of their IDs. He did actually call the victims' families and told them, stop looking, your son is not coming home. Didn't say they were dead, just said stop looking. So that is true, and he did that with most of his victims. He did that because he felt bad that they were looking for them. He wanted them to move on, but obviously he doesn't understand love, and he doesn't understand that they can't move on because where the fuck is their kid? So the episode showcases what the families of the victims experience, what they go through, and it's the first episode where it is shown him actually eating body parts of his victims. So I thought this episode was really awesome. I think it was needed. I think it was a nice break. I think it showed vulnerability to the victims and what they go through and what their families go through. And also it made you realize Jeffrey is actually like a fucking monster. So thoughts?
This is actually my favorite episode of the series, and I thought that it was a very, very, very wise move from the writing staff to shift the focus of the show just for this episode and put it on the victim and showcase this episode from the victim's point of view, because guys, that is good writing tactics, because by showing us the victim's milieu and the way that he views the world as a disabled person, when Jeffrey does what he does at the tail end of the episode, which we all knew that was coming, but that makes the knife go deeper than it would have if this episode would have been shown to us through Jeffrey's eyes. The thing that I love about this episode is that I love that Tony, which is the deaf guy that Jeffrey kills in this episode, has a loving family, but I really, really identified with him trying to convince his mother that in order to be successful, he needs to get out there in the world. And I really love the fact that he wants to be a model and he's looking for a true relationship. He's looking for a true partner. But also, I really like the fact that every gay guy that he comes up to in this episode before he meets the one that kills him in Jeffrey Dahmer is a surface level individual, meaning that I just want to be with you because I want to fuck you. I don't want to be with you for the long term. I don't want to be with you for the lovey-dovey stuff. I just want to feel good right now. And it was really interesting to me, and it was really psychotic in a way that the person that the deaf guy chose in this episode was the one guy that was starving for connection, but connection in all the wrong ways, and it just absolutely terrified me. The scene
Mm.
that broke my heart, though, in this episode,
Mm.
is when Tony, the deaf character, he has these machinations of going to New York to be a model, right?
Mm.
And once he gets to, I believe it's Madison, right? Because that's where Dahmer is. He goes to Madison because
Milwaukee?
another. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you. He
Mm.
goes to Milwaukee because a friend of his, who we find out later died, suggested he should go to Milwaukee, which will lead to better things. He goes to Milwaukee, and he goes from shop to shop, holding a piece of paper and to say to the shop owners that he's deaf and he can't hear. And it's so disheartening.
Mm.
Watch these shop owners constantly turn him down. They turn him down like 3 times before he walks into this one clothing shop with this guy behind the desk. He's wearing like a like a button down blue shirt. And I love the actor's apprehension on his face as he hands him the piece of paper, because he's thinking, I'm going to be rejected because I've been rejected 3 times and this is pointless, but he does it anyway. And
Mm.
I love the fact that the guy behind the desk looks at his resume for a second, and he starts to sign. I'm like, oh my God, this is wonderful. This is so
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's cute.
And I absolutely love the moment when he steps out of the store and he starts hopping up and down on the street. I just think it's absolutely great. Like Dean, I really loved this episode from a tutorial standpoint, because every time that we saw this episode through the eyes of the victim, they played with the sound. They showed us what it might be like to hear the world or to experience the world through a victim's eyes.
Mm.
And it was absolutely mesmerizing. I have a couple more things to say, and then I'm going to kick it over to Dean.
Mm.
I really thought that Dahmer wasn't going to do it. I thought that this
Yeah.
is his way out.
He's changed. He's a new man.
Look, I wasn't deluded, because I know who Jeffrey Dahmer is, and hopefully those of you listening to this episode know who he is. But I was so engrossed in the character that the writers developed, that I thought for half this episode that, oh shit, he might actually get a happy ending. But if he gets a happy ending, then this miniseries
Show over.
doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So so in a way, it was like me on the Titanic thinking, oh, the iceberg is not going to hit us and we're not going to sink.
Yeah. Yeah.
But lastly, I absolutely love the final conversation between the deaf victim of Jeffrey Dahmer and his mother at the dinner table, because his mother's trying to tell him that the world isn't built for disabled individuals.
Mm.
His mother warns him about the AIDS virus.
Mm.
She's so close to her kid, because she doesn't want to let him go, because he's disabled, and she believes that the world isn't built for disabled people or deaf people, which it's not.
Yeah.
So reluctantly, she lets him go. Before he stands up, and this is where I cried. Before he stands up, he asks his mother in sign language, do you want me to wash the dishes? And she goes, no. He stands up. He goes to step into the living room. He turns around, and then he puts up the sign language symbol for "I love you," and I was like, "Oh my
Mm.
God, Jeffrey Dahmer, you son of a bitch! You need to die right now.
Yeah. That was the point.
You need to fucking die."
Yeah.
But lastly, I know I keep talking. I'm sorry, guys. I really loved it that in the initial meeting between this victim and Jeffrey Dahmer, when he coaxes the victim back to his apartment, he goes to slip out the drugs from his pocket, and he just stops for a minute, and then he puts it back in. I'm like, oh my God, he's changed. He's not going to kill him. But alas, he does. And when he does, it is so Oh my god, it's so heart-wrenchingly, I mean,
Yeah.
my heart went from the top of my throat to the bottom of my stomach in that moment. It's just so awful.
Yeah, look, the writers on this show are exceptional. The writing is A grade writing, and I would not expect anything less from a show run Ryan Murphy show. I wouldn't expect anything less. He tends to write most of the episodes with his writing partner Ian Brennan, and those two together are a fucking powerhouse. Ian Brennan, I think, wrote 9 of the episodes with other writers coming in, but Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan are amazing, amazing showrunners and amazing writers, and they only hire the best because they are the best.
Yeah, if I just might, I did notice in this episode, this is the only episode from the back half that Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan didn't have a writing credit on. I'm not saying that they didn't do a pass on the script
Mm.
or on this episode, but they did not have the writing credit for this episode.
Yeah, they didn't
Um,
write all of them. Okay, episode 7, entitled Cassandra. Now, this episode, it centers around Glenda Cleveland, which is Jeffrey Dahmer's next door neighbor. Okay, so the truth about Glenda Cleveland. She was the woman that found the 14-year-old boy and called the police, and the police escorted him back to the apartment with Dahmer, which we've discussed in the previous episode. Now, what the show does is Glenda Cleveland actually lived in the building next door. She was never Jeffrey Dahmer's neighbor. Now, he did have a female neighbor, but what they've done is they've combined the character of Glenda Cleveland and this woman that was his neighbor. He also had another neighbor, which was a male, and that is combined as well with Glenda Cleveland. So in the show, Glenda is a combination of actually 3 people. I do understand why they did this. I have no issues with it, and everything that Glenda experienced was true to form. She could smell stuff coming through the vent. She could hear the screams, so that's real. Other tenants could hear could smell it, could hear the screams as well. But I really love this episode because it focuses on her. It focuses on her repeated calls to the police about the smells and screams and how she just lies in bed at night listening and smelling and she can't do anything and she's just fucking scared. And the police just did nothing. They didn't even come to the apartment block. They're basically like, stop calling. Like, we're not going to come, stop calling. And it's heartbreaking because you just feel so bad for her. Now, Glenda Cleveland is played by Niecy Nash. Niecy Nash, I don't even know if she won an award, but she needs to win all the awards for this. She was amazing. She was my favorite. Like, she knocked it out of the park. She should have fucking won an Emmy, a Golden Globe, fucking every award that there is. She should have won for this. I've seen her in other stuff. She's in a lot of other Ryan Murphy shows, but this was epic. Now, the one thing about this episode that makes it unique, other than focusing on Glenda and what she has to go through. So the last episode was from the perspective of the victim. This episode is from the perspective of the next door neighbor. She suspects Jeff is doing something. Obviously, she knows he's doing something. He knows that she knows that he's doing something. So he knocks on her door and he says, "Can I come in? I just want to tell you, you won't be smelling the smells anymore. I've gotten a cleaner. I've gotten the smells out. I just want to say sorry. Here, I made you a meat sandwich." And she's like, you can see on her face, she's like, fuck no, I am not eating whatever the fuck that is. And there's this whole really tense scene of him going, eat the sandwich. And she's like, no, I'll eat it later. No, eat it now. But I don't know what it is. But I made it special for you. I work at a butcher. No, I don't want to eat it. It's this really, really tense scene of her going, no, leave my apartment. Jeff getting annoyed. Look, the truth about that is the next door neighbor woman who actually did live next to Jeff, he did actually make her a meat sandwich. She was not suspicious of him, though. She actually, I don't know what her name is. She actually did an interview after he was caught saying he was really nice. He helped her with her, heavy bags. He was always courteous, like he was just a nice guy. She did mention that he made her a meat sandwich once and she ate it. She didn't think anything of it. And now she's thinking, oh no, what if it was, I don't think he would have done that. I think it was just normal because when he ate the victims, it wasn't it. The reason he did it and the reason he said that he did it was because he wanted to keep them with him. He didn't know any other way. He said in repeated interviews he didn't know how to love. He didn't know how to make friends. He was socially inept. The only way to keep them is to drug them, and to escalate that to another level is to eat them so he could connect with them. That's the only way he knew how to connect with people to keep them so they wouldn't leave, was ingesting them. So I don't think he made a person sandwich for the next door neighbor. I think it was just legit, but it's something that they decided to ramp up in the episode. So what did you think about Glenda Cleveland and everything that she kind of went through in the episode?
I felt really bad for Glenda Cleveland in this episode. Now finding out that she is an amalgamation of three people that actually lived with Dahmer and interacted with him, I ask you, why do you I mean, I kind of know the answer, but I want to hear your take on it.
Mm.
Why do you think Ryan Murphy and the writing team decided to do that? Do you think it was just for time and they just needed one central character to be the one that cried wolf against Dahmer?
Yeah, they needed to keep it tight because if you've got three different characters, two live in the building, one lives in the building next door, there's too much going on. They probably initially wrote it like that, but then I would say they wrote it like that, but it's too much going on. This makes it tighter. This doesn't make what happened not real because what happened was real. It's just that it happened to three separate people and they've just put it into one. So I don't mind that they did that. I just think it was just to make it just a little bit tighter.
Right. My favorite scene of this entire episode is actually twofold. First of all, Glenda convinces the super of the building to evict Jeffrey Dahmer because of the smell. Because in previous episodes, Glenda Cleveland has told Jeff countless times the smell, the smell, the smell, the smell. You got to get rid of it. And every time that Jeff would interact with her, he would say, "Oh, it's bad meat. I'm sending a cleaning crew or whatever." And it's really ironic to me that when the super of the building knocks on Jeff's door to give him the eviction notice, if you look at it, he opens the door. He opens the door, and behind him is a guy cleaning the carpet.
Mm,
And it's really humorous and funny how Jeff responds to not being able to hear the landlord because the landlord says, "Hey Jeff," and because the carpet clean behind me is like, "What?" So
mm,
Jeff steps out, and the landlord says, "Look, basically, you're a good tenant. You pay your rent on time. I'm getting somewhere with this. You're a good tenant. You pay your rent on time, but there's been various complaints to the building, and you have to leave." So Jeff tries to weasel his way out of it, and somehow he puts two and two together that it's Glenda, and that's when he brings her the sandwich. The whole scene of him trying to get her to eat the sandwich is some of the most exquisite acting in this whole goddamn wonderful show. Why? Because everything is done by dialogue and twitching dialogue and facial acting. It is so wonderful because Glenda's passive aggressive. Dahmer is turned off. Dahmer is so good at being passive aggressive, but quietly passive aggressive. It's so wonderful how Aaron Peters did this. I mean, I would love to talk to him a little bit about his process for taking on this character because I don't know if the real Jeffrey Dahmer spoke in this cadence, but his choice to do that was absolutely fantastic. And
mm,
the moment of the episode for me was like okay, Jeff is at his wits. The moment of the scene for me was like Jeff is at his wits end, and he's like, "Eat the sandwich." She's like, "No." He's
mm,
like, "Eat the sandwich." And I thought that he was going to pull forward and attack her.
mm.
But that's how good the writing and the acting is in this episode. Because 99% of the time, I'm thinking Jeff is going to crack and he's
Mm.
going to physically attack someone. But that's not how he works. Because
Yeah.
like Dean said in the previous episodes, he is not a violent guy.
Yeah.
He does not want to do this. He has a compulsion to do it and he feels bad about it, but his mannerisms just tells you that if somebody looks at this guy the wrong way, this guy is gonna eat them like a lion. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's just so good. I mean, that one sequence with Jeff and his next door neighbor was fantastic. Also, just real quickly, I like the following scene when his neighbor is sitting in the dark, trying to sleep, and they just show the sandwich. I'm like, is she gonna eat it now? Because it's got to be hours later. She has to be
Yeah.
hungry or something.
Yeah. Once again, Evan Peters.
Oh, I'm
Evan.
sorry. Oh,
Poor Evan
guys,
Peters.
guys,
Poor Evan Peters.
guys. Dean will tell you I do not do this on purpose.
No, no, of course you don't. Of course you don't. Okay, so Evan Peters, that is how Jeffrey Dahmer talked. So Evan Peters had a dialect coach to help him speak in a Milwaukee accent. That if you see
Okay, okay,
interviews with Jeffrey, he talks exactly like him. It's
okay.
really fucking eerie. And Ryan Murphy actually said when he was interested in doing the show, the first person he wanted was Evan Peters, but he was a little bit concerned because he's worked with Evan on American Horror Story for years, and he knows that Evan is kind of a method actor and
Oh
takes things very
shit.
seriously. So he was very, very worried that not that Evan would kill people, but that Evan would
No.
like mentally go down the rabbit hole, which he kind
Right.
of did. He kind of said that he did, and on set, Evan would not break character. So he was
Oh my god.
method on set, and that would be fucking terrifying. That would be terrifying. Evan, because Jeffrey walked really straight, and when he walked, he actually didn't move his arms. So when you see Evan as Jeffrey, that's how he walks. He doesn't move his arms. It's very straight. It's very kind of mechanical. He did a great job in emulating Jeffrey. He did an amazing job. So episode 8. And this is entitled Lionel. Now, this is from kind of the father's perspective, Lionel Dahmer. It focuses somewhat on Jeffrey's dad and him trying to rationalize Jeff's actions, blaming his mum, blaming comic books, blaming pornography, blaming everything. But he just can't accept that Jeff is the way that he is. He's trying to work it out. What did the mum was on drugs. It must have been the mum. It's the comic books. It's the pornography. It's the violence in the world. It's everything. But like I said, sometimes you just can't rationalize something. It is what it is. He tries to get Jeff to plead insanity. But Jeff says, and this is true, they did try to get Jeff to plead insanity. Jeff says that he's not. I'm not insane. I knew exactly what I was doing. It was a compulsion. And this comes up a few times. Compulsion is like an addiction. He had to do it. Like alcoholics have to drink. Drug addicts, it's a compulsion for them to have it. He had a compulsion that he could not control. He didn't understand it. Obviously, he couldn't tell anyone about it. And it forced him to do things that he really didn't want to do. Like I said, he didn't want to kill people. He had a compulsion. And I know that people might be saying, oh no, he could have stopped. Anybody that's ever had an addiction knows that you cannot just fucking stop. We're at the trial. So this is the same episode. We're at the trial and the family start making statements. And Dahmer never looks up at any of them, and that's true. I have watched the full Jeffrey Dahmer trial and the families making the statements, and the families in the Netflix show and in real life. I mean, it's verbatim. It's fucking word for word. It's really eerie, even the clothes that they're wearing. And Jeffrey never looked up once at the families in the actual trial and in the show. So that was all accurate. And then Jeff makes a statement. He gets up in his jumpsuit after he's been sentenced to, I think it's 15 consecutive life sentences, which is like 999 years in prison. And this is the statement that Jeffrey Dahmer made to the court after he was sentenced.
Your Honor, it is over now. This has never been a case of trying to get free. I didn't ever want freedom. Frankly, I wanted death for myself. This was a case to tell the world that I did what I did not for reasons of hate. I hated no one. I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick. The doctors have told me about my sickness, and now I have some peace. I know how much harm I have caused. I tried to do the best I could after the arrest to make amends, but no matter what I did, I could not undo the terrible harm I have caused. I feel so bad for what I did to those poor families, and I understand their rightful hate. I decided to go through this trial for a number of reasons. One of the reasons was to let the world know that these were not hate crimes. I wanted the world in Milwaukee, which I deeply hurt, to know the truth of what I did. I didn't want unanswered questions. All the questions have now been answered. I wanted to find out just what it was that caused me to be so bad and evil. But most of all, Mr. Boyle and I decided that maybe there was a way for us to tell the world that if there are people out there with these disorders, maybe they can get some help before they end up being hurt or hurting someone. I think the trial did that.
By the end of the episode, Jeff's dad breaks down and he thinks it's his fault. He's blamed everybody but him. But it's not his fault. It's nobody's fault. He's just like, it's my fault. Jeff turned out the way that he turned out. There is something about the cops that let the 14-year-old go back with Dahmer. It shows them getting police officers of the year in a massive ceremony. That didn't happen. That's not a thing. I don't know why they chose to do that, but the cops got reprimanded. They got basically, what is it called? They got on suspension with pay, but they were reinstated with full back pay and they never had any repercussions against them. So that really fucking tells you everything, doesn't it? But anyway, that was that episode, and it was a powerful episode, I thought.
Yeah. First of all, the fact that those fucking cops that couldn't save that 14-year-old child from Jeff's wrath really upset me, and the fact that in reality they ended up getting suspended with pay, but ended up getting no repercussions was just it was just ass backwards to me. But that is the legal system, folks, for you guys who don't live in the US. The legal system is supposed to be fair, but it has so many holes in it. Case in point, what happened with Jeffrey Dahmer. I really love this scene I really love this episode for two or three primary reasons. One reason is that this is the episode where we really get a sense of how the judicial system in Milwaukee is going to deal with this Dahmer situation. I really, really liked the machinations and the politics of dealing with Dahmer, because those people in power, vis-a-vis the chief of police and the prosecutor who wants to, of course, put away Dahmer, the only thing that they're concerned with is saving their own ass and keeping a lid on this, because they don't want for they don't want this to become a bigger problem with the city, between the city and the citizens of Milwaukee that have been victimized by Dahmer's wrath, which is primarily African American groups. So I found that whole reasoning and those whole scenes about how these politicians were going to cover their asses because they needed to, or else they were going to get fired. I found that whole situation phenomenal. The other thing that I really liked about the episode is, Dean said it, the victims who actually came up and spoke in the trial and just were able to sort of unburden themselves as much as they could. I really felt that some of them were overacting and they were overcooking it, because I thought that might have been a possible moment when Ryan Murphy and his writing partner right. That's what's so fascinating to me about it. After hearing you say it, I initially thought that Ryan Murphy and his writing partner embellished those reactions, because I'm like, I mean, there's mad, and then there's, I'm gonna fucking bury you in a box.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Ryan Murphy and his writing partner and his writing staff had so much respect for the actual events of what happened to these victims. And the story of Jeffrey Dahmer makes me so happy because, like I said before, not a lot of writers who tell true stories, they don't do this. So, but I don't understand why more writers who tell stories and who tell true stories in movies and TV don't do this, because this just works. But I like Dean said a while ago, it takes a specific, it takes a special kind of writer, showrunner, and writing team to do this. Not everybody can do what they did.
True.
But my favorite thing about this episode is when the victims, when the family members of the victims are talking to Jeffrey Dahmer, or making their statement to the court, like Dean said. Evan Peters, did I get his name right that time?
Yay!
Yay!
Time to jump.
Yes, small victories, folks. Small victories. Evan Peters doesn't move, and it is so creepy and so disturbing. I was like, so he's not even going to look up. But also his whole speech that he gives to the court, and basically telling the court, I want to die. I made a mistake and I hate myself for it. But the reason why I went through this trial is so that the city of Milwaukee can understand why I did this. And the other reason why I did this is so maybe other people that are having this issue will actually seek some help, and they will actually get a chance to fix what is broken in them before they become me. That speech, for 1 second, for just a split moment, made me feel bad for Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah. When he was arrested, this is actually in the show, he did ask for the electric chair.
Yes, he did. He did.
So that's true. Because it's so funny because they tried to get him off on insanity. And
he said no, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, he said, he said, I knew what I was doing. Now, to get insanity, you have to not know what you're doing is wrong, right? But interestingly enough, cutting bodies up and eating them, if that isn't the definition of insanity, I don't know what the fuck is. Like, you don't have to know it's wrong. The fact that you're doing it is the definition of fucking insane. And he was insane. He just didn't know why. He knew he was sick. He knew he was insane. He knew he was evil. He just didn't know why. He shouldn't have gotten off, obviously not, but the insanity thing should have gone through because sane people don't do that. But he did want to die because it was a compulsion. He couldn't stop. He didn't want to do it. He didn't enjoy killing. He didn't know any other way. He didn't have friends. He didn't have family he could talk to. He had nobody. So like I said, I'm not making excuses for his actions. I'm just trying to make people see that. And in his speech, he just says it like, I want death. Like, I want to die. I don't want to be like this. And I want other people to try and, like, if they're like me, be helped. And that's genuine from him. And when the families were yelling and all that was true. He didn't flinch. Even his defense attorney was like, he did not even fucking move. When that one woman lunged at him, he didn't even flinch because he doesn't care. He wants to die. He doesn't. Only someone that wants to live would flinch, but he just doesn't, at that point, doesn't give a fuck. Anyway, episode 9, entitled Boogeyman. So, okay, this is a little bit of an embellishment. Jeffy's in prison. There's nothing really interesting. He's just going about his day. Now, they're trying to set up a reason why he was killed, because he was killed in prison by another prisoner. They tried to set up he was fucking with the inmates. He was making chicken legs look like body parts and putting ketchup on it and be like, yum, it's like, it tastes like a leg and all this shit. And that was not true.
He was baiting them.
Yeah, but that wasn't true. That's made up to make it look like there was a reason why another inmate killed him, to make him stop doing that. I'll get more into that in the next episode when it happens, but that he didn't do that. Like, I get why they did it, but that was just an embellishment. The 14-year-old boy that the police officer sent back with Dahmer. His family is Asian. And they start getting menacing, racist phone calls. Go back to your own country. You're not welcome here. Why are you in America? All this bullshit. And it turns out in the show, it's actually police officers making the racist phone calls. That was true. That was not made up. It was racist pieces of shit officers calling the family, telling them to go home. So that was fucked. They're now auctioning off Jeffrey's things to basically the highest bidder to make some money for the state. Now, a real estate mogul gets $300,000 together from different, private investors and buys it all and sends it to the city dump because he just thinks it's wrong auctioning off Jeffrey's things. He just wants it. No, it's just not right. So he sends it all to the dump, and you can see the tractor kind of burying all of Jeffrey's stuff. He doesn't. That happened. That was true. Another thing that happened in this episode, an organization called the City Circle Project bought the Oxford building and decided that they were going to demolish the entire lot, the entire apartment block. And today, the lot is still vacant, and it is surrounded by a black fence, and you can look it up online. There's pictures, people go to see it. There's nothing on the lot. Nothing's ever been built on it. They just destroyed it, and now it's not even a park. It's just like you can jump the fence, I guess, but there's nothing in it. It's just a vacant lot. That is true. So thoughts?
I did not like this episode too much because I thought at this point I thought the series should have ended with Dahmer getting convicted.
Yes,
yes.
The last two episodes are pulling teeth.
Oh, good. Because I was thinking, guys, I was like, Ryan, you're doing so good, but you're testing my patience here, guys.
I know. I feel the same. Yeah.
I feel that the show should have ended when Dahmer was convicted. If Ryan Murphy and the writers wanted to put a bow and they wanted to put a coda, sort of showing us a couple scenes, what happened to Dahmer in prison, that's fine. But this episode and the other episodes that we're going to talk about here in a moment were a bit invalid. I didn't feel that it was necessary to give the audience an explanation as to what brought on Dahmer's death. I did, if I'm thinking of the right episode, find it interesting that Dahmer wanted to convert to Christianity, and I did like the scene.
Oh, that's the next one.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So forget it. The whole thing about the Dahmer's building being demolished, I was like, why do we need this? Like why is this here?
But, just because it happened. That's why.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I just thought this episode was a little bit like, we don't need this.
Yeah. The last two episodes, I think they probably went to Netflix and went, yeah, we'll do 10 episodes. And by the time they got to episode 8, they went, oh, fuck.
We're running out of room.
What the fuck are we going to do? Think of something, writers, think. So the last episode 10, entitled God of Forgiveness, God of Vengeance. It's interesting because it starts off, the first 5 to 6 minutes are about John Wayne Gacy and about how he kills people, which was a kind of like a, what? And then he gets arrested. There was no point to that, really.
Yeah, but you know who I thought that was? But then I actually thought about it. I thought that was BTK. I was like, no, that's not BTK.
Oh, okay. No, John Wayne. Look, there's a lot of fluff in this episode. There's a lot of liberties taken. Dahmer did have hour-long sessions with a pastor each week. He did get baptized on the day that John Wayne Gacy was executed. That is true. He did turn to God for salvation. That is true. He didn't believe that it would expunge him of his sins, but he didn't want to be bad anymore, basically. So that the whole thing, it went on for a bit too long. But the thing that is heartbreaking to me is, in real life, like I said, he had hour-long sessions every week with a pastor. And he actually said the real Jeff actually said to the pastor, which the pastor was given an interview, said to Jeff, he says, Jeff said to me, "Is this what it's like to have a friend?" And that really,
Oh wow.
and because he's like a child. He doesn't know how to interact. And he even said, Jeff said in another interview, "I don't know how to love. I don't know what it is." Uh, and it's just like, oh man, like again, not excusing him, but the level of emotions that he wanted it. He didn't know how to get it. He didn't know how to make friends. He was very socially awkward. He didn't know how to keep friends. And, to keep people, you kill them. Okay, cool. That works. Let's do that. So I do feel bad for him because it's like a 2-year-old trying to navigate Earth for the first time. That's what it feels like that's what I feel like it feels like from his perspective. So that was true. So we see Jeffrey in prison, and he is in the gym cleaning because he gets 25 cents an hour. That's what they do in prison. So that's true. He ends up getting killed by another prisoner by the name of Christopher Scarver. Now, that's true. In the show, he beats him over the head with a pole, but in real life, he beats him over the head with a dumbbell, which is quite poetic because Dahmer's first victim, he actually killed with the barbell, with a dumbbell. So that came full circle. Why they didn't show that in the show, I don't know. Why he used a bar, I don't know. Now, they spent a little bit of time on this guy, Christopher Scarver. It was a waste of time because they tried to push the fact that he was seeking God's advice about what to do with Dahmer because he felt like Dahmer was just a horrible person and God told him to get rid of him. True or not true, I don't know. We spent a little bit too much time on it. But when Scarver actually gave, in real life, that we didn't see this in the show, which we should have, gave his testimony, he said that he believed he was 1,000,000 years old and he was the son of Christ. So he was basically schizophrenic, insane, not all there, which he shouldn't have been put in prison. He should have been in a mental facility. He should not have been in prison because he also murdered another prisoner. So murdering Jeffrey wasn't, as the show portrayed, like, oh, fuck him, I don't like what he did, because he murdered someone else as well. He's just an insane person, and they tried to validate kind of what he did, and there's no fucking validation for it. This is the heartbreaking bit of the episode. His father gets notified of the death. And it's a really, really sad scene because his father loves him, doesn't know why he is the way that he is, blames himself. And I guess he just never know why. And he just loved him regardless, it's actually really sweet. Upon Jeff's autopsy, his brain was removed. That is true. And they want to send it to a university to study it, which I back. Like, why not? His dad is against it. His mum is for it. They go to court and the judge basically goes, I want this to be over. Cremate the brain, because Jeffrey's body was cremated. His dad was like, Jeffrey wanted his whole body cremated, but Jeffrey's not here. And studying of the brain would have been interesting. They probably wouldn't have found anything, but it was interesting. The last bit of the episode was Glenda. She's trying to get a memorial put on the vacant lot. And basically the woman who she's talking to says there's a lot of red tape and the city doesn't really want a memorial because they just want to forget what happened. And Glenda is like, but we shouldn't forget what happened. And today it's still a vacant lot. They've been trying, Glenda Cleveland died, I think, in 2011, but she did try for so many years to get a memorial and there's not. I don't know if there should be or shouldn't. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. But I do think that these people should be remembered. That is the last episode. It was sad because I think that I don't think he should have I think he should have stayed in jail. I don't think he should have gotten killed the way that he did. I think we could have learned a lot from him because there are people like him out there, and he could have helped, which he wanted to. But
yeah, he could have helped. Like, could you imagine if he didn't die? He could have helped. He could have helped.
He could have helped psychologists recognize that in other people.
Yeah. No. He could have helped the FBI's version of Mindhunters.
Yeah, exactly. If
you think about it, yeah,
exactly.
I hated this episode. Oh my god!
Oh wow! Tell us how you really feel.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't understand why Ryan Murphy and the team they in the second half they took so much time
I know.
with the victims. I'm like, I don't look, I feel sorry for these people. I I feel sorry for these people. What happened to them shouldn't have happened, but constantly watching them try to come to terms with what Jeff did to them and how most of them who survived him are kind of seeing him everywhere. I'm like, guys, I understand what you're trying to go here. I understand what Ryan Murphy and his staff was trying to go for here, but I don't care.
Yeah, I know. I get you.
I
It
don't
was
care.
it was fluffy. It was a lot of fluff.
Yeah. Look. I know that you are on the fence with whether or not Dahmer's former living quarters should be turned into a memorial. And just watching the show today,
Mm,
or watching the show over the course of 2 days, because that's how I roll when we do regular movies, guys. FYI,
mm.
um, I'm not sure about if there should be a memorial not for the victims, because I believe a memorial for the victims will constantly be a reminder to the public what happened here. And I'm not saying that we should forget all the evilness in the world, but sometimes the best medicine for the human soul, when something unbelievably tragic happens to them, or when a loved one is lost, or God forbid they're sexually assaulted for whatever reason, sometimes the best medicine for those individuals is to learn how to let go,
Yeah,
and to find a way to move on.
yeah,
And that's why it was so agonizing that Glenda wanted to do this for the community. I'm like, her want to do this for the community, to me it read to me like she couldn't let go.
yeah. I think the families wanted it as well, so
Right.
people would stop focusing on Jeffrey and start focusing on the
But
victims, which people don't ordinarily do.
yes, that is true. And I understand that they were coming from a good place. They were coming from the right place. But the thing is, look, a lot of people in this country and in many countries in the world are obsessed with serial killers, but a lot of them aren't obsessed with serial killers because they like them.
Mm,
They want to understand them.
yeah,
They want to understand their psychology, like me and Dean. We like serial killers, but we don't like them because of their actions.
yeah, true.
We like them because of their psychology and what they and I'm obsessed with the why. I thought this miniseries is immaculate, but I feel that it falls off the cliff a little bit at the very end.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. In conclusion of this episode, Jeffrey said in an interview, he was asked, do you still, if you were out on the street, would you still do this? And he says yes, because he can't stop. So it's a good thing that he's in prison. So he doesn't, like, he still has the compulsion, but obviously he's in prison, so he can't. I feel for the victims, but I also do feel for Jeffrey, because he didn't understand who he was. He didn't like who he was. He didn't have anyone who understood him. He didn't know why he was doing what he was doing. And interesting, after this was not included in the show, but I don't know when it happened, but obviously after the Stephen Hicks, which was the first victim, he said he was at a public library. And this is when he had the mannequin and all that, and he was trying to curb his compulsion. He tried everything to curb his compulsion. He did. He didn't want to do it. And he said there was a man that dropped a note on his desk at the library, and he opened it up and he says, come to the bathroom, I want to give you a blowjob, basically. And Jeffrey just kind of went, what? And he kind of laughed it off. But he said that was the point where the compulsion came back. And if that hadn't happened, it probably would have come back anyway. But he said that was the point where I went, oh my God, like it just came back full force. In his life, if you track his life, you can see everything in his life led him to do what he's doing. Everything. from his upbringing, from his taxidermy, learning how to taxidermy, from his military training, because that's where he learnt body parts. That's where he learned, because he wanted to be a medic. That's where he learned how to sedate people. That's where he learned how to open up people.
Yeah, that's where. But he learned how to use ketamine in the army.
Yeah, exactly. He came home and he tried to not do it, and then the incident at the library happened, and then his compulsion. He said in interviews he tried not to do it. He didn't want to do it, but the compulsion kind of overcame him. That doesn't excuse him, but like I said, I do feel for him, because he didn't know what the problem was. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our special mini-series on Dahmer, and I hope my friend Michael, who requested it, enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this, you can subscribe and like and share. And if you enjoyed it, you can email us at themixtapepod@aol.com if you just want to share your thoughts, or if you want to tell me to go F myself because I feel sorry for Dahmer. I feel sorry for the victims too, but that's just my opinion. Don't hate me for it. Usually I would end the podcast with, if anyone's kind enough to make a mixtape, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to do that with this one. I'm going to end the podcast naming the 17 victims of Jeffrey Dahmer, so people don't forget the names, because this has all been about why he did what he did, and we're kind of forgetting the victims. So I'm going to read out their names now, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Stephen Hicks, Stephen Toomey, James Doxtator, Richard Guerrero, Anthony Sears, Raymond Smith, Edward Smith, Ernest Miller, David Thomas, Curtis Strota, Errol Lindsay, Tony Hughes, Conorak Synthesophone, Matt Turner, Jeremiah Weinberger, Oliver Lacey, and Joseph Braden Hoft. Thanks for listening, guys. The Mixtape Podcast is a Balloonhead Productions presentation.